All right. Doing a video here on all the announcements from FabCon 2025, which happened last week in Vegas. I had the opportunity to go down. It was a great time in sessions, networking, all that good stuff. Lots coming out of this that'll trickle in over the next few weeks, months, days, whatnot. I try and, or I am going to try in my content to not just restate what was announced. You can look at the blog for yourself. There's going to be a lot of other creators as well that may do a decent job at summarizing the announcements. I'm going to try and give my perspective on how I actually think it will change how we do things and not just what it is. I think we have far too much of that going around, just exploring the functionality of cool toys, not enough discussion on how will they or won't they change how we work in Fabric or in other tools. So what I'm going to do is just go through the main blog post here from Arun on the main Microsoft blog. Keep in mind that a lot of the links in this main blog post will just take you to sort of the general Microsoft Learn documentation. So if we just scroll down here, and I will go back up and review them, but if we look at something like for example, this link takes you to like the roadmap for Data Factory, right? Like it's not taking you to the blog post that exists on the Microsoft Fabric blog on blog.fabric.microsoft.com. There are in and around 45, maybe more. Like I'm on page 9 here, and this is March 31st. So yeah, there are in and around 50 blog posts on the Fabric blog alone. This is just the stuff from Microsoft. This is not community posts really in terms of opinions or anything like that. So a lot of the detail on these individual features are all contained inside of the main Fabric blogs. So definitely go and look for the specific blog post related to the thing you're interested in, and get the detail from there. So just reviewing some of the big announcements. I'm going to step through these in a moment. I'm going to quickly jump over to something that I've put together and just kind of talk about how I look at a new feature. I look at it through kind of a value lens and an applicability lens. We'll call this the feature classification framework. So things that are actually game changers. What is my definition of game changer, right? When we talk about this thing here, what does that mean? This is, significantly changes or, in some way redefines how we approach solution design. And this could really be for anything, right? This doesn't necessarily have to just be for Fabric, but when you're looking at stuff in tech, someone's coming out and saying, "Oh, such and such is a game changer," right? Like, is it really, or is it just a really cool thing to have to solve a particular use case? In which case, I'd be more inclined to put it under this bucket I'll call seriously useful. So, game changers totally changes how we do things, or at least significantly does so. Within that, I will put these in broad or niche. So, is it a game changer for everybody, or is it a game changer for a particular use case or particular set of customers? So, we got those two options there. We've got the game changers, we've got the seriously useful categories, and we've got basically everything else, which I'll throw in a nice to have quality of life bucket. Like these are things that just make the experience nicer to work with, or pretty minor details that will come out. You hear of a certain need, you think, oh yeah, isn't there something related to that? that I could leverage to help out in this particular scenario. So I'll jump back to the blog for a second and we'll kind of cover off, and I will categorize the biggest announcements that came in terms of new capabilities. The biggest one here at the very top being one lake security. So this is, I'll call it long overdue from my perspective. At the same time, I respect the work that the team has had to put into getting to this point. I think the marketing got a little bit ahead of where they were at, given that this was sort of announced really right when Fabric came into public preview, certainly when it went to GA. But up until this point, you had to define security in different places. Semantic models, lakehouses, warehouses, the actual underlying file structure itself, they all had separate ways that you managed how users got access to data. I think there were really only a few different ways, and I'll probably do a separate video on this, but the ways I see that impacting customers up to this point was either you implemented some fairly complex solutions that felt patched together and frankly a little bit scary in terms of how do I really quickly understand who has access to what and ensure there isn't data leakage. It was not an easy thing to do. Or you just didn't implement security at all. And by that, I mean, if you had a use case that required row level security inside of Fabric, you basically would just said, no, I'm not going to do it. I will implement it sort of in the classic semantic model scenario, which, that's fine. It wasn't that big of a deal. But the fact that we have this will certainly change how we think about design. How many lake houses do we need? Who has access to what data? And being able to see that all in one place. So anyone working in Fabric, definitely encourage you to go find the blog, watch the YouTube video on how this is going to work. I've put this very strongly in the number one broadly applicable game changer category. This is like S tier, really important stuff. Keep in mind at the moment, this is in a gated public preview. So nothing crazy. You don't need to like have an NDA or anything like you would with a private preview. But you do need to fill out this form. You do need to get approved. I don't know if there's a guarantee you'll get in. This is not a common thing, though I've seen it more recently where there's these sort of public preview features that kind of require you to sign up and say, like, yes, I understand that this is not something that I should use in production. I think given that this is a security thing, that's why this is going through a gated preview. Like imagine they launch this in public preview and someone uses it and data leaks out somehow because there was a bug, right? Like that would be really bad. So definitely sign up. You've got to specify, for your particular tenant, a particular capacity, a particular list of workspaces. So, they really want you to go off and do this in some kind of sandbox environment and not in production. Kind of on you to figure it out, which workspaces you want to use, which capacity you want to use. I've signed up. I'm not in yet. I assume that'll be, coming over the next week or two. Not sure. But just wanted to spend a little bit more time talking on one lake security because, that is very fundamental to the platform. And I'll make a separate video on one lake security. So that's my first broad game changer. Jumping back to the blog. Another one that was, and these are sort of all the keynote things, like these ones with their own headings. They were where the time was spent in the keynote at FabCon that kind of kicked it off. So this is, one is a renaming announcement, which is AI skills are now being renamed to data agents. I think that's a better name for what they do, right? Everything is moving to this kind of agent term now, where they're going off and doing things on your behalf. That's kind of what these are doing, right? It's the ability for um, this independent agent, to go off and reason over the data you have in Fabric and come back with a response. But the actual announcement here is much more around the integration with AI Foundry. So if you've got someone working in AI Foundry, they can now integrate Fabric data agents into the overall agentic experience that you may be building inside of AI Foundry. So outside of the Fabric context, you could have this more general agent that's got a bunch of different services and connectors. And when it gets a question that, again, this is a bit of assumption on my part in terms of how it works, but if said, what were sales for last year? And I asked that to my general agent in AI Foundry. It will say, hey, that kind of sounds like a Fabric question. Hey, data agent in Fabric, can you go find me that answer? And it will go off and retrieve the answer, bring it back to the AI Foundry service, and there you go. So pretty cool stuff here. I've put that in the niche bucket under seriously useful. I don't think all customers are going to jump right into this. I don't think that you want to rely on AI yet for answering questions that have to have a specifically correct quantitative answer. Like there can't be any percent chance that these numbers are wrong. And from what I've seen, that the odds are low in a lot of cases if you've done the work up front to build your semantic model, best practices, all that good stuff. I've seen Chris Webb do some really cool blog posts related to that in how you should be building these semantic models. I mean, for the most part, it's best practices we've always had: garbage in, garbage out, all that good stuff. But that's just some of my reasoning why I kind of consider this niche, right? I'm not going into every single customer and leading with data agents as something that they have to do. Copilot and AI capabilities in all SKUs. Okay, so this one, I actually rank this more highly. I consider this broadly applicable. I think the limit previously, if you weren't aware, is that you had to be on an F64 and above Fabric capacity. And that's essentially the 5,000 US dollar tier. I think that would probably be a blocker, or probably was a blocker for a lot of independent consultants, people who want to play around with it and test it, because that's really the area that we're in right now with all this stuff, right? It's, I want to play with it, I want to test it, and the Venn diagram of that with, I want to suck up my F64 capacity for playing and testing, maybe not was a great overlap there. So now everything down to an F2 and above, you can use Copilot. And that's across a lot of the different workloads. That includes data agents. That includes, I think, Copilot in Power BI and in data pipelines and notebooks and everything like that. So really impactful. Not 100% a game changer, right? Because again, back to my point around data agents, I don't think you're always using these everywhere. They're no silver bullet to your data challenges. But certainly at this point, I think everybody will be using Copilot or AI capabilities to some extent, even if that's just as a developer writing code in a Spark notebook, for example, which is a place where it really shines, frankly. Okay, so just jumping back to the blog here. The next one was around the Synapse data warehouse migration over to Microsoft Fabric. So this was demoed during the keynote. Really cool stuff. If you're on Synapse, sort of a guided experience through that migration. Um, Obviously, that only relevant if you're on Synapse, so strongly in that niche category. I do think it's a game changer though, in terms of like if you're in this bucket, you're on Synapse, now you've got, the bar for migrating is coming down, whether you're doing that internally, or bringing in a partner potentially to help you out with that. Um, the cost and effort should go down significantly. Um, Potentially easier said than done, but clearly there's been a lot of investment here. I think, pretty surprised to see this as like a native UI experience built into the product, as opposed to some like external other tool that might be kind of sanctioned by Microsoft to help out there. So that was interesting to see. Like there's been significant investment in making sure that um, customers are able to get off of Synapse easily. Are these the early days of kind of the initial indicators that Synapse may go end of life officially, right? Like unofficially, it hasn't been invested into for quite some time. But I think we've seen this in the past with a lot of Microsoft products where it's like, now that we have these built-in experiences and a really easy way for you to shift over, now's the time to move, et cetera, right? I think we have seen that before. Otherwise, that's all I'll say on that. Yeah, definitely take a look if you're on Synapse. Otherwise, the remainder of the blog just kind of falls under this bullet point list in terms of like individual feature, what it does. These links are, they take you over to the docs. Yeah, if you're interested in these things, I would just say go directly to the Fabric blog. Find that there's 50 of them for the FabCon announcement. So dig through, find the blog. If there's something I talk about, there's a blog post on it. So you can dig in there and get the details. So in terms of how I'd categorize the remaining feature, there's two that I think are game changers, one in each category. And I'll kind of walk through this top left to bottom right. So variable libraries, I think these are a big deal. What this essentially allows you to do is create an object inside of your Fabric workspace and have different values whether you're in a certain workspace. So the classic scenario here is going to be, I have dev, test, and production. And as I go through those environments, I want a different set of variables to apply in each stage. There's a lot of patterns. Like I can't say specifically how you would leverage this in particular. I saw one really great session on a full metadata driven ELT architecture, where I was able to, or where they were able to put in, a list of tables to be ingested, right? Kind of following that pattern that you may or may not have seen, but that list of tables I want to bring in, kind of the names of my lake houses, where data should go in different environments. I can define all of those inside of this variable library. It's integrated with Git, so I don't have changes randomly occurring. And then when I deploy into test and production, I'm guaranteed that the test set of values apply, or the production set of values apply. So I do think this will change really how you work with Fabric. Yeah, from my experiences with Fabric, I don't see a customer in which I wouldn't use these for. So that's why I put that in the broad bucket. Under a niche game changer, updates for mirroring. So some blockers previously that are now resolved here are things like those sources being behind a virtual network. So now you can go over a VNet data gateway, or on-prem. So it works over the on-prem data gateway now as well. I think support for Postgres was announced. Oracle was teased, I think, as a sneak peek. So again, if you had sort of a data source from a networking perspective that wouldn't have worked before, or you've got a new source on that list that's now supported, that could be a game changer for you. I think from my discussions at the conference and just a general sense I'm getting here is that mirroring will be the future of how we bring data in from most of these, structured systems that have, um, uh, some form of modern database behind them. We're going to get away from manually managing, keeping track of watermarks and incremental loads and all that stuff off of these sources. Um, yeah, if you're doing mirroring, if you thought about mirroring, go take a look. Could be some really good things there for you. Okay, coming down into the seriously useful bucket here. I'm not going to, go to each individual blog post because I tried to do that and I think I was getting to almost 3 hours. So we'll try and go through these a little bit faster than that. We talked about the Copilot and AI capabilities in all SKUs. CI/CD enhancements, I've just bucketed this up into a general, like everywhere, all the time. There's improvements all over the place. Honestly, too much to keep track of. Um, it would be nice to say that this is just like complete and every single workload supports it in GA. That's not the case, but they've really moved ahead here. So getting a lot of the current preview into GA done, getting a lot of non-supported features into preview, yes. And I think something like variable libraries, like launching out of the gate with CI/CD support, at least in preview, I think will be the future. So I'm hopeful that the launch of Fabric, where you had all these workloads that didn't support Git integration at all, it didn't have APIs, like that's going to go away now, hopefully, and new workloads that come in and new features that come out will just have CI/CD out of the gate. It's hopefully going to affect everybody. If you're working in Fabric, you should be using CI/CD. So I'll argue it from that perspective. User data functions, again, I mean, these were only for Python, so I guess you could argue that these are more niche. I guess most deployments of Fabric that I've seen are still oriented towards that Lakehouse notebook Spark pattern. That's where the investment is. That's where Fabric shines. Although they're doing lots of amazing stuff on the data warehousing side as well. But user data functions will help us more, put more structure over some of the functions that we're building, as opposed to putting that code in a notebook and calling it, right? You can have a lot more control and centralization of your Python functions. And there'll be, I think, a whole security model here in terms of like who can use them and when and stuff like that. So not 100% sure on how they've implemented these, but I think they're definitely going to be seriously useful and applicable to most deployments. Dataflow Gen 2 improvements, I bucketed these up again. Like there's probably multiple announcements here, but the big one for me is the ability to do parameters with data flows. Like everybody's been asking this forever. It was a huge blocker to actually implement these because you had a data flow. It was hard coded. It was like how do I incorporate that into my overall pipeline? It was kind of this, it would always sit off to the side, right? Now we can have it as part of our overall ingestion pipelines or transformations, I guess, potentially. But a big one for me is the additional connectors that are supported in Dataflow Gen 2. I would like to get to, and I think we will get to the place where the copy activity would be supported for all of the connectors that we have in Dataflow Gen 2. But I'm going to take this for now as a big win, which is the fact that I will now be able to kind of open up and assume that if there's a connector available, whether it's a copy activity or data flow, I'm kind of okay to go with the data flows because I can parameterize the whole pattern. Last one here in this sort of broadly useful, seriously useful is this is kind of a two in one. Uh, First is the ability to create direct lake models from desktop, which is nice. It wasn't a particular fuss for me, honestly. I'm kind of happier over time to keep working in the UI. I know some aren't, but I spend less time, frankly, in Power BI at all at this point. More on the other kind of fabric areas, but the big one here is, and kind of flipping the story a little bit, only available in Power BI Desktop is going to be the ability to add. Um, I'm going to probably change this to lake houses because I think that's the actual reality here. But across lake houses to be able to bring in multiple tables. This was like very weird previously. All tables had to be in the same lake house, but it would work if you shortcut those tables in. So the table itself didn't have to reside in the lake house, but you had to have some kind of pointer to that in your lake house that your semantic model was on. So let's say you had the marketing lake house and you wanted to bring in a date table, let's say, and you've got that stored in some other, it's more like centralized lake house across models. You have to create the shortcut of that date table into the marketing one. And maybe that makes sense, right? Like, it wouldn't be strange to have a date table in your lakehouse. But if you start thinking about some of the more creative things that we need to do sometimes in Power BI in general around like a disconnected um, dimension table, stuff like that, like helper tables for visuals, you really wouldn't have a good place to put those. Like, again, you'd have to shortcut those into whatever workspace or whatever lakehouse you're working on. So yeah, I think it's a big deal. It's a nice improvement. um, we're going to be doing this all the time now, kind of getting to this um, I think distinction separation potentially of the lake house and the direct lake model. Like I have a table in the One Lake catalog and I want to bring that into my semantic model. The lake house that happens to sit in is hopefully going to take more and more of a back seat to the fact that there are tables in the catalog. The tables exist in One Lake. I hopefully really get to the point where I shouldn't care at all what workspace or what lake house it's in, right? Yes, from an organization perspective, that matters, and that's going to be handled through the catalog. But having these minor issues of like, oh, well, I can't add, across different lake houses didn't make much sense, but that's gone now. So I think everybody will be really happy with that. All right, jumping over to kind of this bucket of seriously useful but niche features. We already talked about the Fabric data agents. The Terraform providers there, if you're an org that's leveraging Terraform, this is going to be pretty useful to you. Yeah, that may be all I have to say there. If it's kind of, if you know, one of those things. Similar with the event stream connectors, go check them out. They've added quite a few here that may be useful. Or maybe totally irrelevant because you don't use real-time intelligence or you don't have those services, in which case that's why it's under the niche bucket. Auto scale billing for Spark. So I'll call this niche because not all of my customers had an issue with this. So I think broadly speaking, if you have all of your jobs being done like on a daily or more frequently than that basis, you're able to really take advantage of that 24-hour background smoothing where you were looking at the average amount of compute used. And that fits really well with the billing model for Fabric. I think where this was problematic was, let's say that I do something once a week um, because the data is not available or for some other reason, or or a month end reporting scenario where I just want to scale up, do a really big job, and then turn it off. Pay for what I use. This will fit that scenario. This is much closer to how Databricks works, and I think this will be able to be combined with the like both methods are going to live here. So this isn't like you have to pick one or the other. You'll be able to, I think, put those really bursty workloads on auto scale for Spark, pay for those separately, and then for everything else you'll put it on the sort of standard capacity model, which I think is great. I think it's nice to have that choice. It was a big ask from, I know, a lot of customers and partners. There's no downside. You don't have to use it if you don't need it. So yeah, only good things to say there. Partner and ISV integrations. One thing I took away from FabCon, I think, is that even Microsoft sees their own workloads in Fabric. So like a notebook, a copy job, a Power BI report. They see all of those as workloads inside of Fabric. And the sort of workload development SDK and all these ISV integrations, they're just additional workloads that they're opening that ecosystem up to developers, other partners, software vendors to build solutions inside and integrate their solutions inside of Fabric, which I think is really cool. So go take a look at those. There's some new ones that have been announced and enhancements there. Multi-tenant org. I think this is like, if I could put this over in an extra niche category, if you're in a multi-tenant scenario, there's some updates here. I don't deal with this. I don't know if I've ever dealt with it well, not to a significant extent, at least. So I probably can't speak too intelligently to those. Cross-tenant sharing, there were some good improvements here. Again, niche, because not everyone has the use case of like, I need to share data with my customers or vendors, stuff like that. Though I see more and more of that in the work that I've been doing. So the ease of use here, I think, and there's going to be a bit of like critical mass on more and more of your customers being on Fabric, hopefully. Kind of like what we saw with Power BI, with some of the capabilities there, is that it's not out of the realm of possibility that your customers are going to be on Fabric, in which case you have a really easy way of sharing data with them. CI/CD support for shortcuts. Kind of already talked about CI/CD over here. I was thinking about this more in terms of the like code and stuff you've built. This is more like from a feature perspective, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't make sense. But shortcuts being in CI/CD is nice because that could be a bit painful before. But not everybody is using shortcuts, in which case this isn't relevant to you. All right, moving on to the nice to have quality of life bucket. This got everything else, things that are a little bit faster to go through. So a couple things that I thought were sort of broadly applicable. Everyone's using Excel, of course. OneLake catalog integration. So this is the ability to pull in tables of data directly from the OneLake catalog. I think as opposed to pulling them from Power BI, which you could always do, initially was more like pivot tables against your semantic model. Then we had the ability to bring in tables from Power BI semantic model. Now we're going a step further and saying you can now bring in tables directly from the OneLake catalog, even if they're not in a semantic model, I believe is the big thing here. So that's always good. Anytime we can get away from manual exports and we have more live integration, that's good. There's obviously always a governance discussion that should be happening here when anyone's asking to pull data into Excel. Um, but you're being given more tools to assist in your solution to that need. Tags being GA. This is nice. I think tags, they don't see a lot of use, is my sense. I think the tenant admin requirement is a bit of a big um, ask here. Like these have to be defined, at that level. I think I'd like to see the ability to create these at least at a capacity level, if not just a workspace level, right? Like we work in workspaces. That's how we tag items. So I think workspace level would be my ask here. Um, I think keeping them at the tenant level would be kind of cool, but there needs to be probably more functionality around the tags themselves. Like just having a big list of tags sitting at the tenant level without much context is kind of strange. I haven't thought too much about it though, in terms of like what would I want to see. Not sure. Okay, going over to the last bucket here, which is kind of these niche quality of life, nice to have things. Um, so command line interface, like this was in the keynote. I don't live in the CLI world, so to me that's niche. You may feel very strongly in the opposite direction. Um, but for me, the customers I work with, like I'm not going to be pulling this open and showing them how to work within a CLI. But it's cool, nice to have, I guess, if it's something you're into. Couple things GA here that I'll just kind of go through. Airflow is GA, good. Copy job GA. Azure and Fabric events as triggers GA. So some more GA stuff. Depends if you're using any of these, like the copy job. This is specifically the copy job workload, not the copy activity inside of a pipeline. Um, Personally, I found these kind of strange, but yeah, they're okay, and they're GA now, so that's good. Um, AI functions. So these are built-in functions inside of Fabric within a notebook. So you can say like AI dot like sentiment analysis. That's it's built in. You don't have to go to an external service. Um, Arguable, right? Like why not? I'll move these up here. I kind of still niche, but I'd kind of consider these seriously useful. Like if you had scenarios where you needed to do, I think translation is one of them. We can just pull this up, right? AI functions in Fabric. This wasn't at, well, it was announced prior to FabCon, um, but there's some cool stuff in here. So like similarity of text, text classification, sentiment, extracting of like things, like I want to get locations, grammar, summarization. That's a big one, right? If I've got a huge text field, let's say I'm in my bronze layer and I've got like a notes column, maybe in silver, I do a summarization of that. Um, just the one I'm kind of thinking of on the fly here. Translation is a big one, right? Like I don't know, you've got lots of organizations that are um, across geographies, across countries, across languages. Maybe there's something there. And this one is probably the most useful, right? Like generate responses based on your own instructions. Um, so like here's an example in like a pandas data frame. Like here's a data frame of some like products, and write an email subject line for a winter sale on these things like that. That's really cool. I think I don't know where it is, but that functionality, here it is. Yeah, there you go. Um, AI functions are powered by GPT 3.5, so that might feel like a little bit old. You might not get the best responses. Um, so if you try them out, and you're wondering like why it feels kind of underpowered, it'll probably be due to that. But I think for summarization and stuff like that, like it work really well. Okay, so yeah, I'll revise that up to seriously useful. I think um, there's a lot to be explored here in terms of AI as part of our pipelines, not in how we build them, but in running AI functions as part of that overall process, right? Like the example I gave, a notes column in bronze, and then using AI to refine that and summarize that, extract value out of that in the downstream layers. I'll reorganize things a little bit here then for our next feature. So Fabric linked to Dataverse. There were some more improvements here announced. Like these were kind of back end changes. Like there was no big flashy announcement here. It was more just reliability and making it better. In terms of Dataverse itself, there was actually an announcement related to mirroring as well, so that you'll be able to mirror data in instead of Fabric Link, which is shortcut. Um, yeah, I would have to look into the difference there. I know with Fabric Link, there's some degree of delay, or at least to say it differently, no guarantee of how fresh that data was. I'm not sure if mirroring will be similar or if it'll be closer to near real time. Um, yeah, I need to do some testing, or at least see more in the blogs about the two of those and what is actually been done to change the approach there. Copilot experience in notebooks. I believe the big thing here is the ability for the Copilot to have a little bit more context of like data in your data frames that you're currently working with. Um, so having that in the context window of the model is going to help to get you better responses as you're working with notebooks and Copilot. Again, this is like this niche scenario of who's in notebooks, who's using Copilot. You're getting smaller and smaller in terms of that audience, but Copilot everywhere, no surprise. Last one here. Finally, data annotations in the Power BI add-in for PowerPoint. So this is the ability to actually put your own custom labels on the data points, right? Which is something that you probably want to do if there's a big spike in your in the data in the slide you're showing. If there's a big there's a trend, there's a spike, there's something an anomaly. I want to be able to explain what that was. I would love if we got more of this in Power BI itself, as opposed to this being a PowerPoint thing. I don't disagree that this is a better fit for PowerPoint, but I would love to just have this done in the report itself, um, and then it would show up in PowerPoint or wherever else. Um, I might be missing something here, but I believe this was only for PowerPoint, and it's a cool thing to be able to do, at least. All right, that is it for this video. So those are my thoughts on the different announcements from FabCon, kind of how I see things. Where are they actually game changers? Where are they not? Where are they going to be useful for everybody? And where are they more of a niche thing that you only need to pay attention to if you strongly resonate with what that feature is providing? Okay, yeah, more to come. Stay tuned for some more content on, for sure, on OneLake security and variable libraries, hopefully coming up shortly. Thanks for watching.